Now that we understand nodes completely, the interface of n8n, what triggers are, what action nodes are, what are different types of nodes, let's build our first automation workflow. We will be creating a very simple business workflow in this lesson where as soon as user submits a form, it could be any kind of form, a Google form or any kind of web form that you may have on your website or blog, where you are asking user to submit some details, and as soon as the user submits it, you want to send them an automated message or an automated email. It is pretty much a need of any business out there. So let's get to the screen share. Alright, so I'm currently at the overview section of my n8n's cloud instance workspace. I'll go into the personal project over here and click on this n8n course folder that I have. I've kept organized everything in different folders in my personal workspace as well as another one that I have. You can always click on create workflow to get started. Otherwise, I have this workflow 1 user sign up first workflow as a template created over here. It's a blank workflow over here right now. So if I just zoom in a bit, you can see we just discussed that in any business there could be an operator or yourself. You might be dealing with some manual review of new customer sign up alerts as soon as a form is submitted, like a Google form. Then you might be manually going in and sending them personalized welcome email to all the customers who are signed up using that form. And finally, you may be taking some kind of an action, maybe like submitting a Google Sheet entry if the customer has provided a company email. It could be something related to that. Okay, you want to like further reach out to them or send them into a different kind of a sales funnel, or maybe notify your sales team or marketing team, so that because it's a corporate user, corporate customer, you might want to follow up or cross sell something else. So these could be different paths that you might be taking. But first we are just dealing with a welcome email, and I'll give you some ideas as well how you can extend this workflow further as well. So let's start building now. You can see I need to add the first step, and the first step is always a trigger. So right now, what could be a trigger, right? We do not want this workflow to manually trigger, that's for sure. What we want is automation, right? So as soon as that form is being submitted, I want the workflow to trigger and send the automation email. So for that, what we'll be using is something called Webhook. And don't worry, I'm going to deep dive into the topic of what are webhooks, what are API calls, what is an HTTP nodes later in this course. But just for the basic understanding of this lesson, a webhook allows any kind of workflow to wait for any kind of external event to happen so that it can be triggered on that particular event. For example, over here we would see that as soon as a Google form that I have configured, it gets submitted. A Google form is a form which is outside n8n. It is provided by Google Form service. So I'm going to create a Google form. You might create some other kind of form. Same way I have configured my Google forms as well, that as soon as someone submits that Google form, a webhook gets triggered so that this automation can be triggered automatically. So basically, out of all these triggers, what we want is on webhook call trigger. So I'll click on this. So now you can see the configuration parameters of this webhook node, and at the top there is a button called listen for test event. So this is basically, as soon as I click on it, you can see the webhook has started listening for external events to happen. So right now it is not going to receive any kind of event because we have not integrated it. So what I'm going to do is, for now, I'll click on stop listening. I just wanted to show you that. And then next thing that you see over here is there is this test URL, and then there is this production URL. So what you can do is you can test your workflow with the test URL, and as soon as you are ready, you are satisfied that your workflow is working as per your expectation, you can make it production URL and configure it using a production URL. Don't use the test URL. So for now, we are going to do a test. So I'm going to use the test URL, and I'll show you where this will get used. Now there is second parameter that we have to configure, which is more like an HTTP method. So what kind of method are we going to listen to? Is it more like a HTTP get request? Is it more like a post request? So for this example, I'm going to use post because I'm going to receive data. I don't want to like give back data. I want to receive data, which is my user data submitted from Google form on this particular workflow. So right now we have post method configured. You can leave other parameters like path, authentication as is, and respond immediately is what I have configured. What you can do is as soon as the last node finishes, then you can respond, or using respond to webhook node is also a configuration that is available. But for now we are going to leave all other properties as it is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this URL. I can click on this. I have copied this URL. Now I'm going to go into the Google form that I have built. So you can see that I have this new user sign up form, which is kind of a temporary form that I created for this particular tutorial. And over here you can see I have first name, last name, email, and role. Very simple, very basic form. You might have some kind of a different form, maybe more complex form, but just wanted to like give you an example. So this is my Google form. What I have done is I have gone into, you can click on this, 3 ellipses button, and then you can go into this app script. So Google form do not allow you out of the box functionality where you can integrate Google Forms with a webhook. So what I have done is I have created something called app script, and when you click on it, what happens is it opens up this code editor for you. You need to go into this and create a new app script app. As soon as you create it, you would get this code editor where you have to paste this code, and I'm going to provide you this code as a link to the file of this code, so you can use this code. And at the top you can see there is this variable called post URL. That's where we are going to paste our URL from the webhook that we created, or webhook trigger node that we created. The URL was there. I'm going to paste that URL. So what is going to happen is that as soon as any form or Google form gets submitted, the webhook will receive the data. And where it will receive the data? The URL that we have mentioned over here. And I'm probably going to make a detailed tutorial, step-by-step tutorial, how you can configure Google Forms in order to integrate with webhooks. But for now you can follow these steps, use this code, and go over here. As you can see, there is a trigger here as well. So in the trigger section, what you have to do is create a trigger. Deployment would be head, and the event type that you have to select is on form submitted. So as soon as the on form submit event gets triggered, this code over here, which is in the editor section, will get fired or executed, and it would send the data on the post URL that you have configured over here. As soon as I change it to the production, like as soon as change my configuration of my workflow to production, I have to come back over here and change this post URL to the production URL. This is something that you must keep in mind, because if you are going to use this workflow in production, then make sure that you are using the correct URL, not the test one. I have put the test one over here. What we are going to do is we are going to just save it. So I'll just click on this, save. All right, so this is saved. I'm going to give it a quick run. Let's see what happens. It should give me an error. Okay, rightly said, it has given me an error. So what this error is telling us is that the requested webhook, whatever the URL is not registered. So what this means is that right now our webhook is not listening, right? So if I go back onto my webhook, you can see it is not listening for any kind of event. So it's not registered over the internet to listen to external service events. What I have to do over here is I have to click on listen for test event. So as soon as I click it, now it is listening for a test event. And now if I go back over here and I click run, we should at least see, you can see execution is completed. And if I come back over here, you can see some sort of data is here. And you can also see that some data has come from a previous form submission. So this is not the data that has come. I have not submitted any form. It is coming from a previous execution that I tried. So the first name is here, last name is here, email is here, role is here. So this was from a previous run. What I'll show you is a live run right now. So we'll click again, listening for test events. So now again, our webhook is configured to listen for post requests of a Google form that would get submitted. So over here, you can see that on the right hand side, I have an incognito window open where I will basically submit a form, a new Google form. And on the left hand side, you can see that we have our webhook listening to the event. I'll just stop it for once and I'll click again, listen for test event, so that it starts listening again, so that it does not time out. It basically times out sometimes. So I'll just paste the URL on my incognito. You can see a new user sign up form has come up. So I'm going to write test customer, last name test Ellen, The email could be again test@gmail.com. We are just testing it out, so I'm not putting like any real data. So then role could be developer. I'll click on submit. So as soon as this form has been submitted, you would see a response is received. So as you see, it has stopped listening now because it was in the test URL and we were listening to the test event only. And I'll just expand this window now. So let me expand this. And at the bottom, you can see that we submitted these details. First name test customer, last name test LN, email test@gmail.com, and the role is developer. So that's how you integrate Google Forms with a webhook. Now that we have our webhook configured, a Google form configured, where as soon as a Google form is submitted, we're going to send an email. Let's go ahead to the second node that we'll be using now. So I'll go back to the canvas. I'll just expand it. So the first step of our workflow is more or less automated. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this plus, because the next step that we have to do is send an email. So for that, more like an action node that we have to select. So let's search for email. So you can see there are different services that are there through which you can send an email. You have Gmail, you have Outlook, you have an email trigger as well, but this is more like a trigger. We need an action node right now because we need an action which is more like sending a welcome message to the customer. So either you can use send email, Gmail, or Outlook, or there is another service. So let's say I use send email node. I'm going to like just show you the details of it. So if I use send email node, I have to create a credential, which is more like as soon as I click on this new create credential, I have to set up a SMTP account. So you would need your username, password, the host name of SMTP, the port if it is SSL or TLS enabled, and if your provider requires any kind of a host name that you have to provide over here. So I generally don't use any kind of personal email box, more like Gmail or Outlook, while sending out emails. I have something configured in Amazon SES, which is like simple email service. I use that so that my reputation of the IP address gets maintained and I maintain a high deliverability rate so that my emails do not end up in a spam box. In some other video, I'll discuss in detail how you need to set up the SMTP credential, but for now, I'm going to use a pre-configured node using Amazon SES, which is simple email service from Amazon Web Services. It does the same job of sending an email. So let me go back to the canvas and just delete this one. So you can click on delete at the top. It deleted the node. So I'm going to search the AWS SES. So you can see it is there, AWS SES. If I click on it, what action I want is send an email. So I'll use this one, and you can see I have one of my SES service credential already configured. If I click on this edit button, it will show you what kind of credential you have to set up. So what I have done is I have set up the SMTP user in my Amazon SES account, and then I have an access key and a secret key that is being used in order to access the service of Amazon SES. So if you want like the SMTP details, if I click on this Amazon SES, which is like from AWS is Amazon Web Services. It is more like a hyperscaler. So you can see these are the details for SMTP configuration, and I have created a SMTP credential, more like a secret key and a secret password. You can use some other service as well, more like Gmail or Outlook as well. But like I said, on a business, you should have some kind of a professional service, more like SendGrid or other services, which ensure that you are following high deliverability best practices. But for now, let's come back to our workflow. So I'll go back over here, and as I said, this is the credential that I've already set up. So rest of the node configuration looks like we have email. So I'm going to work on the resource called email, not template, not anything else, because we have to send an email. The operation is send email, not send template or a custom API. So is the body HTML? I mean, if you are sending an HTML response, if you have pictures, you need formatting on your text, you can turn on this flag by clicking on it so that you can send the HTML body. But for now, we are just testing it out. So I'll just leave it blank. So over here, what I have is subject. So we'll just write welcome. So the next parameter is the body. So I'm going to click on this icon over here to expand a bit so that you can see it clearly. So we'll write hello. So now the question is that you have to send all these emails that should look personalized welcome message. So how do I get the first name over here? So for now, let's just use angular brackets and I'll come back to it. So here we have to write first name. Okay. So I'll just write this and let's drop the rest of the message. That's the body. I'll just click on this cross button to close it. And now you can see that over here I have hello and the first name. So this is going to send the email as it is. Next is from email address. So I'll just mention my email address, connect. So we are sending an email, a personalized email from our brand. So it is a best practice that you use some kind of a brand domain emails, not the generic one like the gmail.com or hotmail.com, because they more or less will tend to fall into the spam folder, considering some kind of spammer is trying to reach out to the email box of that particular customer. For now, let's come back. So now we have basic things configured. We have to change this first name to more like a variable, so that as soon as the customer who is submitting the form, the new customer, their name, first name gets replaced over here. And the second thing that we have to do is to address, like whom are we sending to. So this is where the to address will come. So remember, we have connected this node, the AWS SES node, or you may be using, send email node with SMTP configuration. You would have connected this node to the webhook. So the webhook is listening. As soon as the form is submitted, we want a welcome email to be sent. So here you can see in the input, this is the webhook trigger and it is giving me some data. So the body has the first name, body has the last name, email and role. So we are going to use these parameters. So instead of using schema, let's use JSON. So I'll go down over here and you can see this body. It has first name, last name, email, role, as we just looked at the schema configuration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click on this, grab it and drag it over here for now. I just remove this first name. And now you can see that over here it says hello and then these double curly brackets starts, and we are going to come to it what this means. But I just clicked on the first name and dragged it over here. It automatically converted into a variable kind of notation. And also what you see is from fixed, it has turned into an expression. So expression, as soon as you have any kind of configuration parameter in the expression mode, you have access to the JavaScript. And when using JavaScript kind of thing, you can use double curly braces to enable that portion into the JavaScript mode. So you can write any piece of code inside it. And right now we have not written code. We have just dragged and dropped the first name over here and it has automatically converted into kind of an expression. So what you can do is you can use $, JSON, because JSON is the interpretation that we are using, then dot, then it comes to body. And again, I'm going to deep dive into the detail of how the data works in n8n, what is JSON, how it works in the next lesson. But for now, let's just drag and drop the first name over here. And at the bottom, you can see that, okay, comma is missing. I'll just write comma. At the bottom, you can see there is a preview as well. So the first name is a test customer and you can see hello test customer. So that way we have configured our body template of the email so that it is more dynamic in nature. As soon as the form is getting submitted, the value in the first name is changing. So now I'm going to come back and see from email is fine. Now we need to fill in the to address. So same way what we are going to do is I'm going to drag this email and put it in here. So again, you can see it changed from fixed to expression. The preview is test@gmail.com and you can see it says double curly braces starts and then $JSON dot body, which is this node body, and dot email, then this property. So what we can also do is I can click on this and I can say send welcome message. So my node is now renamed to send welcome message. So if I click on test step, it is going to send the email. So now it has sent the email, but there is no way to verify it because I use test@gmail.com. So I don't have the credentials to it to log in. So now I'm going to do is I'm going to submit a real form with a valid email address so that we can see whether that particular email has been sent successfully or not. So now that this output is green, that means our SES node of sending email is working. So we'll go back to the canvas again. So now we have two steps configured over here. And what we are going to do is we are going to say test workflow. So as soon as I click on it, you can see that waiting for you to call the test URL. And I'm going to go back to my form. Let me go back to the form, new user sign up, and I'm going to paste again that URL that we had. So you can see now I'm going to write in the email address, I'll paste this GenAI Unplugged@gmail.com. and then like I'll mention developer as my role, and I'll click on submit. So it's submitted, and you saw that, you know, it worked and it sent the email successfully. It should have got the new data. You can see that the input was DJ Sharma, GenAI unplugged@gmail.com developer, and the email message was sent. Let's go to my inbox and you can see welcome to GenAI Unplugged. So we have automated most of the work that operator was doing. Now what we have to do is we have to extend this workflow to see if the emails that are being sent is of any kind of, you know, some company domain. If yes, then they are corporate users. So we are going to use very simple logic for extending our workflow. So I'll go back to Canvas, and what we are going to do is now I'm going to put a core node in place. So you can see the configuration screen of if node is opened up. So here it's condition. So right now we are checking on the value, and over here it says like whether it's string. So what we are going to use is we are going to check for the logic if the email ID ends with gmail.com or hotmail.com. So we are going to just use these two. You can use code or you can use expression, regular expression to verify in much more valid kind of scenario if you are putting this kind of workflow in production. However, we are going to use very simple logic to identify whether a particular email is a corporate email or a generic email. All these generic email tends to end with the domain which is more free kind of a service in nature, more like Gmail, more like Hotmail or apple.com. So we are going to just use hotmail.com and gmail.com for now. And because it is ending with, in the string you can see I have an operation, so many operation, exists, does not exist, is empty, but at the bottom you will see does not end with, does not start with. So I'm going to use like does not ends with. So basically does not ends with gmail.com, and I can add another condition that would say instead of and I'll say or, and we need to have value over here. So you can see that this particular if node is connected to our SES node, and SES node does not have access to the email address that was entered. It is just letting us know the output of the SES node, which was like message was sent successfully through so and so service, and the message ID was this. It is of no use to us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to access the previous node, which was our webhook. The webhook is here, so it is 2 nodes back. So I'm going to click on webhook over here, and again we can access the data that was sent to webhook. So what I'm going to do is email. So what we want is email. So email will come over here. I'll drag dropped over here. So email does not end with Gmail, or again email, sorry, it says equals to, I have to use does not end with. Oops, I should be using and over here. So basically email does not ends with Gmail and email does not end with Hotmail. So that means the customer is a corporate customer because the email is not ending with Hotmail or gmail.com. So right now I have Gmail over here. So if I click on test step, you would see false branch active and true branch not active. So in the false branch, you would see the data, but in the true branch, there is no data that is coming because the condition is false. It is not a corporate customer. So our if node is working successfully. So now you would see that there are 2 branches over here. One is true branch, one is false branch. Now if we go back and look at the workflow that we have outlined, the last step was an entry in Google Sheet is made by the operator if the customer is corporate customer. So how do we know corporate customer? We have already configured that. The true branch will lead to a corporate customer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it. We'll add a Google Sheets. So you'll see Google Sheet node is over here. I'm going to click on it, and the action would be append row in a sheet. So for now, what I have done is in my Google Drive, I have this, corporate signups follow-up. If I click on it, you would see it is empty. First name, last name, email, role. That's what we are capturing. So I have configured a Google Sheet that is empty in nature right now, and it's under my Google Drive. So I'll go back over here. I have already set up a credential. Again, like I said, we'll go back to my YouTube channel where I'm going to publish a lot of tutorials, step-by-step ones, how to set up all these credentials for different services. So for now, I have already configured a Google Sheets credential. You can click on this and you can see my account is connected. You can sign in with Google. It's pretty much simple. You click on this sign in with Google, a pop-up comes up. you give all the access that is required. You trust that, whatever you are working with n8n is a trusted developer. You give it the access and it is going to get integrated. This is a simpler one. Drive is a much more complicated one. We'll come to that one later on. But like I said, I've already configured it. I'll go back. What we have to do is we have to work with sheet within a document. So that's fine. Operation is append row. That's fine. We don't need to do anything else. Not update. We just need to append it. From list, yes. I'll click on this. So because it is already authenticated, it has access to my Google Sheets and the Google Drive. So that's why it is showing me all the sheets which are there in my Google Drive. So we had this corporate signups. So I'll use this one, and sheets within it, there is nothing much. So sheet is sheet 1. So as soon as I selected sheet 1, you can see mapping of calling mode is enabled. Map each column manually. So right now we have first name, last name, email, role. It is asking for us to map columns manually, but what I can also do is map automatically. Over here, let me click on this. So it is now going to basically map all the data that is coming into the sheet automatically, but we could have also used the manual option to map them. What I'm going to do is now I'm going to go back, and because it is selected to the true one and there was no item over here, that's why it was not showing. So what I'm going to do is, for now, let me just first submit a data and show you with example that how we can map manually as well. So let me submit a valid response, which is a valid corporate user. So I'll go back to my user sign up. So this is the form that we have to submit. So I'm not use the Gmail ID or a Hotmail ID. So it should end up being a corporate email. Before I submit, I have to click on this test workflow. Now I'll go back over here and click on submit. So now a new user form is submitted. It is waiting. It should execute. So you could see that a new item should have been entered. So if I go my sheet, alright, so this has corrupted. So you can see that it has entered the send email response, which is incorrect because we ended up using something called automatically map. So now I'm going to just delete it, and we are going to go back and fix the workflow. So here, if I open it up, so you can see that it is basically acting on the if node, and if node is receiving the response from welcome message, which was 2 nodes back, and it did not have any kind of data. So here what we have to do is we have to map each column manually. So if I click on this, then it is going to fetch all the columns which were there, first name, last name. And what we are going to do is we are going to click on this, and we are going to go 3 nodes back, which is Webhook. And from here, we are going to drag all this. So I'm going to drag first name, I'm going to drag the last name, I'm going to drag the email. So now this node would have access to the data which is coming in the Webhook, then the role. Okay. So now we have all these configured. Now if I click on test tab, it should enter the data correctly. Now we can go back, and you see that the new data has been entered successfully. I'll go back once more to end this lesson. We'll test it again. So now it is again waiting for fresh data. So we'll go back to our form. If I click on submit, you would see the workflow should execute now anytime. The workflow has been executed, and you can see the true branch is executed because we had an email ID that does not end with Gmail or Hotmail. Now if I go to my corporate sheet, okay, so corporate user sign up, John Smith, connect@discoverwithleaders.com owner. So just like that, you have built the first automation workflow for yourself to free up either your time or the operator time. And you can see how easy it is. There is no code required. You just dragged and dropped certain things, configured certain things, and everything happened, the entire workflow, without you lifting a finger. So at the end of this lesson, I'm going to give you food for thought so that you can extend this workflow. How about you add this data entry to a CRM software that you might be using? How about you filter more data, you make that if condition node in a way that it is more robust. It is not just checking hotmail.com or gmail.com, rather it is going to work in more generic way. Maybe you can use regular expression in order to work on that. Maybe you want to send a Slack message to your team so that they can follow up with a new corporate customer. Or you can use delay notes so that you can send a follow-up email after 1 day or 3 days or 7 days. I hope this step-by-step tutorial I provided you in depth for your first ever automation workflow was useful in breaking up that hesitation you might be having, in making you understand how easy it is. I was trying to be very detailed in this particular workflow or tutorial. I might not be that detailed in the coming lessons. Now that you have a hang of the interface of n8n, what these options are, how the node configuration opens up, how the expression editor is opened up, we'll try to move quickly on these screen shares as we are building more complex workflows so that you get more exposures on different kinds of workflows that can be built in n8n. So in the next lesson, I'm going to deep dive into the concept of how data is transferred, how data is moved in n8n, what is JSON, what are tables, what are items, how they are processed in n8n. So very important lesson coming up. Hence, I'll see you over there.